okay? It'd be real nice to think about healthy food, et cetera. Are there things about this, and so the way to have a good, successful health curriculum is for it to become a way of life, right? To own it. Are there things within this that go in that direction in the same way? That this is, service isn't something you do a couple times a year. Service is really, it's sort of a way of life, so it becomes natural that, of course, service is part of what a democratic society depends on.
Yeah, I think some of the things that we talk about is allowing them to see how easy it can be, right? Like, again, even with ours is, hey, when you walk along the path, do you pick up trash if you see it in general, right? Like some of those things, and I think it's kind of an eye-opener to that. Or, hey, how easy was it to be at Coco's Heart, right? They're always looking for people that way. But I do think that as we move along here, I think it's been positive in our sense, because one of the ways we kind of came up with it was the food drive last homecoming wasn't super successful. There just weren't a lot of people, and we said, why, right? Like, where was, and again, we heard a lot of I's and me's, and I was like, where is the we and where is the whole in this? So we've tried to push this a little bit, and we did a huge push this year with our student council as well, and it was through the roof, 10 times better. So I just think, like you said, continuing to expose them and realizing the importance of it, and kind of seeing how easy it can be done if we remember to put our mind in that mindset too, and not just kind of tunnel vision for ourselves and have that bigger perspective. I think that's helpful too.
Because the side effects of this are significant as well, because a democratic society can't function unless people are willing to step forth and do stuff, right? And we need to work together in a democratic society to make it successful. That's the whole foundation of democratic society. So this is a different type of thinking, but it's part of, so why should I pick this up? It's because I'm supposed to. Not because it's just, I mean, in part because it's good for me and it's good for that person, but this is how societies work. This is how the fact that we're all here to participate, and it's part of that. So I think there's also this other dimension to it, so that's part of the reason I like it, and there's so many ways to sort of tug on this as we teach students how to become good citizens, basically. That's where this is going. So, great, thank you.
Well, thanks for being here. It was just great. Thanks for your work.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks, Taylor, for coming and keeping your mom. So she was brave to get up and do this. All
There
right.
were tons of people that said, yes.
Not too bad.
So we are going to move on to reports, and the first one is our student representative, and Jada has it for us today.
So I just wanted to talk about how well the school is going right now. We just finished up our first semester, and I feel like a lot of students are excited with that and excited to start the second semester. Especially the seniors that already graduated after the first semester. And I feel like there's a lot of motivation right now with their new classes and a fresh start. Also, winter sports are going strong as they prepare for the playoffs in the coming weeks. I do know that the boys basketball and the girls hockey are both #1 in their conference right now, which is exciting. Student council, we have been pretty active. Our Winter Wonderland was a huge success, and we saw a lot of students really enjoying the activities in the school spirit. So we are planning a spring fling week to keep students engaged and just excited for the school year as we finish it out. And yeah, I'm excited for what semester 2 has to bring.
Great report. Thank you very much. All right, we have a superintendent report, mid-year update.
Yeah, so I did a memo this time, as opposed to my normal PowerPoint, got to keep you all on your toes. So yeah, like Jada mentioned, we've reached the midpoint of the school year, exactly our midpoint right now. So we have plenty to celebrate, but also there's some cause for concern and the need for ongoing stakeholder engagement. So as this board knows, over the past 2 years, schools and departments have developed goals and actions designed to influence academic growth, student engagement, and employee satisfaction. And this work has included implementing new curricula, focusing on educator collaboration, increasing our capacity to address the unique needs of our students, and improving operational efficiencies. And while these priorities encompass our core responsibilities, they have to be addressed while we're also supporting the daily needs of our students, families, facilities, and coworkers. So we continue to look for ways to focus these priorities while not losing the sight of our overarching belief that all students can learn and grow at high levels, and we can be a school district of choice for employees and for families throughout the state. And so one way we've been doing this is the board has really renewed a commitment to tracking our progress on performance indicators that will evaluate our growth. And while these indicators don't measure all that we do, hopefully, we can see a connection between one or more of them and the indicators that we have in our overall growth as a district. And so we know, I'm going to share some highlights of that data, and we know that when we look at data like this over a relatively short period of time, it can be dangerous. So I'm not necessarily advocating that we draw long-term conclusions, but another thing that's important to do is to closely look at these and call out where we see successes and celebrate them, and recognize maybe where we have some challenges. So one area that we've been celebrating this year is our overall district report card increased by 7% from last year. One subset of that is our target group, and there the score for our target group increased by 15%. And target group is really the measure of achievement and growth of students that have previously scored in the lowest 25th percentile for our district. So what that really recognizes is that we're zeroing in on intervening for students who maybe need additional supports. And the report card in 1 year, again, not drawing too many conclusions, is showing some nice growth, and we're proud of that. Each individual school gets their own school report card, and each of them grew in 2025. Our high school, one way that we measure readiness is our overall ACT composite score. We saw a 2% increase. When we look at employees, our retainment increased by 2%, overall 88%, which is above state average. We had a pretty aggressive timeline this summer, as most employees and students would recognize, but we were able to finish our facilities projects on time and within budget. We've decreased the number of chronically absent students by 1% over the past year, and we've increased the percentage of students that are participating in co-curricular activities by 2%. So none of that happens without knowledge, perseverance, and expertise from students, from families, and from staff. So there's lots to celebrate. So while there's a lot to celebrate, I wanted to make sure I took time to share the status of our current budget forecast, because it presents some uncertainty and worry. It would be logical to assume that since we passed the 2024 operational referendum, that our district must be in great financial shape. But as I'm going to describe, there are some factors that are causing concern, and I want to stress we're not in a dire situation, but high-functioning districts get ahead of these things, have communication so stakeholders understand the current realities, and this is what we're trying to do with this communication. So the first reality that we're facing is the 2024 operating referendum was essential. It provides no further increases after next school year. And so the additional revenue limit authority holds steady at $3 million. So if we would have not passed that referendum, the conversation that I'm having tonight would have had to have happened 2 years earlier, and our current and last year's budget would have looked significantly different. So it's easy to forget because it's been a couple of years of what the actual operating referendum was. So we were able to increase our revenue limit by $1 million in 24-25, another $1 million in this year, 25-26, and lastly, the third $1 million next school year. And that $3 million increase to the revenue limit is permanent, but after 26-27, then we fall back in line with the state's vision for how the revenue limit works, which is the increases are only allowable on a per pupil basis, and that's set by the school budget, the state budget, excuse me. And so I put some footnotes in here, so if people want to review, I'm using terms like revenue limit and equalization aid and some of these pieces. And while we talk about that quite a bit, it's not maybe common vocabulary, so I tried to leave some notes in there for people. So this is a very simple table that just kind of shows the impact of that 2024 referendum. So if it had not passed, then we would have had only the two thus far state-imposed allowable per pupil increases, and we would be at 11,666 for our per pupil revenue limit. Since it did pass, we're up to 12,344. So that's the piece that is that first part, which is it was essential for us to continue to operate as we are as a district. Even with the exemptions that were allowed by passing the referendum, when you take a look at our regional average against the other comparables that we compare ourselves to in this region, we're still slightly below that average. And that includes all of those district exemptions that they've done if they've passed their own referendums. Or if they haven't, then their number is only includes the regular revenue limit. So what that just points out is, one, it was essential that we passed it, and two, it still doesn't put us in a situation where we're greatly exceeding our regional average of revenue limit. So the second reality that we're facing is our overall student enrollment is decreasing, while at the same time, our special education student enrollment is increasing. So our revenue limit is based on a 3-year rolling average of student FTE. And when your student FTE decreases, then your revenue limit will also decrease. So clearly, your FTE is most closely associated, although not exactly associated, with your head count. And so between September of '22 and September of '25, our overall student enrollment, our head count, the actual students that we serve, has decreased by 1.8% in totality over that, in cumulation over that time. And so it's very hard to predict enrollment changes, but over the next 5 years, given what has happened in the past, we're not anticipating the enrollment will increase and it may slightly decline. You may recall we did a demographer study. That demographer study has been inaccurate thus far. Not wildly inaccurate, but it had predicted sort of flat enrollment for that same period of time, and we're down by 1.8%. So we're taking a much more conservative approach as we budget, and we're also hopeful that maybe enrollment would stay steady and increase, but we just can't have the luxury of hoping when we're setting our budget. So what that means is the reality is our overall revenue limit will likely stay the same or could potentially over time decrease. So an interesting factor to that is in the same time period, from '22 to '25, the enrollment of students with disabilities has increased by 13%. So we have a slight decline in overall enrollment and a pretty significant increase in our student with disabilities enrollment. So we were optimistic and looking forward to the fact that our special education aid increases might offset some of the needs associated with increased special education enrollment. However, the actual aid the district will receive from the state in the form of special education reimbursement is going to be lower than originally projected by the state. I put a link in there that kind of summarizes the why behind that. Lynette, both in finance and facilities and in these meetings, has explained kind of the realities that we're sitting with there. So we have two realities. We have overall decreasing student enrollment, and we have increasing special education enrollment. So the last reality is with this last budget, all of the revenue limit increases in this year and next year are from increases in the local tax levy, not through increases in state equalization aid. So as I just stated, the state budget did include special education funding, but it did not include state equalization increases. And those special education aid that they said is overstated. So what that means is the local tax levy is shouldering all of the burden of the revenue limit increases. In addition, we recently passed the 2024 operational, which is shouldered by our local tax levy, as well as the 2024 capital referendum. So we have to be sensitive to the reality that an additional referendum isn't in our current plans. So what does that mean? Well, what that means is, given some of our realities, the district's going to be required to address staffing and insurance adjustments to the budget to operate in a sustainable manner. And that's the work that the district leadership is going to be engaging in over the next 6 to 8 weeks as we prepare for the next school year. And as we do that and we prepare recommendations for the board, we will remain committed to providing ongoing communication to staff as well as other stakeholders, and seek feedback from these stakeholders as we navigate those current realities. So what does that look like for our staff? It looks like listening sessions at each site. We've invited board reps to attend those so they can hear that feedback firsthand, as well as it being summarized for us. It means this update is provided in our next e-newsletter, as well as being presented here. It's not an ideal situation, but again, just to circle back, it's also not a dire situation. This is the reality of some of the work that we do, and I think we'll lean into it and we will be able to deliver a balanced budget for next year that also forecasts out to make sure that we're not just worried about next year, but really thinking about the year after that, and the year after that, and the year after that with some of these realities. So more to come, but just we felt like it was an important time to provide this update.
think, Dave, just additional comment on that. So think about this, really, looking at the documents, when we talked about this in committee, really appreciate the planful thinking that's going on in the staff right now about this. No surprises to the board. I don't think there'll be any surprises to the community when we finally roll out the final plan. In fact, I remember when we were having conversations in public meetings, and we had, 45 public meetings or whatnot on the last referendum. Our discussion was, we're asking for $3 million, and here's how it would go out over a 3-year period. Beyond that, if we don't get increased state aid, and enrollment doesn't at least stay stable or go up, we will have, this is what we're gonna face. I mean, we were talking about this 3 years ago or so.
Yep.
And we've been aware of it, and I can see that in the planning and those kinds of things we've done. So I know that a number of school districts are in a similar situation like us across the state, and some have, I don't wanna use the word panic, but they've really jumped the gun and surprised a lot of people. So this is what gets communities really concerned and upset, is when all of a sudden, there's a big surprise. What do you mean we're gonna cut $2 million out of next year's budget or whatnot? So I think this will avoid surprises, or should help us avoid surprises. Help anybody who's got questions about it now, ask questions, and you'll be rolling out a lot more information about
Yep.
this going forward. And allow us to adjust for this over a period of time, so hopefully we accommodate this better than if we had not been planning and aware of this. So anyway, it's a long way of saying I appreciate all the planning and thinking and conversation that's going on, engaging the staff, and keeping the hood up so that everybody can see what's going on.
And I appreciate that this is going out in the newsletter, getting it out. It's well stated. Thank you. Anything else on that? All right, then we're going to move into action items. Before the board this evening, we have meeting minutes from the December 15th regular Board of Education meeting. We have bills that have been submitted for payment. We also have employment recommendations. In the consent agenda, we have all of the items under item 4. Is there anyone who would like to remove that from any individual one from the consent agenda? Then we are going to pass those second readings of the new Neola policies. Would any board member like to remove a first reading from item 5? All right, then all of those are also in our consent agenda. So at this point, is there a motion to approve minutes, bills, and employment and Neola policies as presented?
So moved.
Thank you, Allison. Is there a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Monica. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried 6-0. All right. We are going to move on now to the recommendations from the Policy Ad Hoc Committee. We've been working hard on that. There are 5 policies that we're going to go through. So I'm going to take a motion in a second, and then Dave is going to make a few highlights about these 5 policies, and then if there would be any discussion, we can have that, and then we'll vote. So at this point, is there a motion to approve the first reading, and I will list these, of Neola Policy 3112, School Board Staff Communications, 3120.04, Employment of Substitutes, 3120.10, Job Sharing, 3122.01, Drug-Free Workplace, 3362.01, Threatening Behavior Towards Staff Members.
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. And Allison, you did? All right. Dave?
All right, so 3112, School Board Staff Communications. The big change here was a recommendation to provide an introductory paragraph that demonstrates the board's vision for open communication, open lines of communication with staff. The Neola recommended policy maybe didn't have quite the same level of our vision for what that looks like. So the paragraph that we landed on is the school board welcomes collegial conversations and interactions with employees that further the interest and insights into the school district and its operation. Typically, school board members rely on an invitation from staff for school and building visits. That's the part that was added to the overall policy. Besides that, there was a small change to some vocabulary in section B. We switched to challenges there. So that was it for that one. Moving on to the next one, which is employment of substitutes. If you go to the second to last paragraph, there was some question on what happens once a substitute employee gets to 10 consecutive days. And so we wanted to clarify and align that to current practice and what's in our handbook. So it says a substitute employed for 10 consecutive days in the same professional position will be paid a prorated daily rate that is not less than the base rate on the current salary schedule. So that was the change to that one. Job sharing, the committee asked to go back and look at how we roll the policy out and make sure that the language for the policy makes sense. And we felt very comfortable that it allows, the intention of this is to allow current employees the opportunity to initiate a request, and that's what this guarantees. Now, different job sharing or how we split FTEs and those types of things, that might be a larger discussion, but the purpose of this is to allow professional staff the opportunity to engage in a conversation with their supervisor about initiating a job share, and we feel really good that the language allows for that the way that it was. We did change in number 2, that it must be submitted by March 15th, which it said before, but for the following school year, we clarified that piece. And then in number 1 of continuing the job share arrangement, we wanted to make sure that there was a simplified timeline and the opportunity for the principal supervisor to evaluate the effectiveness. So we simplified the language in number 1 to just note that. So that's the adjustment there. Drug-free workplace, very small change to this. We consolidated the first and last statement into what is now the first statement, which is the district is committed to maintaining an alcohol and drug-free workplace, therefore, and then it lists the activities that are prohibited. That was all the change for that one. And then the last one was threatening behavior towards staff members. The feedback from the ad hoc committee is we needed potentially some clarification on how this policy would be implemented and making sure that all sort of potential ways that there would be threats could be addressed without concerning the employee would have to make that report to the person that is maybe being the threatening individual. So the last 2 paragraphs address that. Staff members should report complaints of threatening behavior to their supervisor with carve-outs if their supervisor is the person that they're making the complaint towards, and the carve-out if the complaint was about me. And the last sentence there basically provides the vision that the supervisor and superintendent are in charge or responsible for investigating and reaching a resolution to those threatening behaviors. So that was the additional language there. So are there any questions on any of those additions to the policies?
Thank you. I think that reflects exactly what we talked about in our committee meeting, so that went well. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? The motion is carried. All right, educational program, and then there are 2 motions that I think we'll take individually. But Alan?
The Education Programs Committee met on January 12th, and we basically had 2 significant agenda items. We had several things to talk about. But the first we dealt with was to approve what's called the memo to establish seats for open enrollment. This is, in Wisconsin, students can open enroll between districts, but we have the right to say how much capacity we have in certain grades. So this is a document that lists that, where we have our capacity and where we don't. Basically, I think this year we have capacity in all grades, except in special ed, where we have none, given the funding limitations Dave laid out earlier. And then there's also an official document we have to complete each year that talks about our educational options and what those are. And maybe Mary Beth or Amy, I'll let you guys talk about both of these a little bit.
So the open enrollments, we talked about in Ed Pro, and it's exactly what Alan said. It's the number of seats that we offer to students for open enrollment from other districts. And we do have seats available in every grade level. We've looked at our enrollment, and we focus on making sure that it isn't going to increase our staff count. So making sure that we're aware of where we have extra room and grade levels that we potentially don't have extra room. And then Alan mentioned the special ed piece. The other piece that we had a lot of discussion about last time was the district's notice of educational options. There were several components that we discussed edits that we brought to the board. One being the change of adding a paragraph, a new paragraph on the listing at the bottom, changing and making sure that we had Northwood Technical School in there and not WITC. At the very beginning part where we talk about enrollment options, putting that in order of what we valued or what the board valued. So our very first option is attendance at a resident public school. And then program attendance at local district charter schools, or the early college credit program, Start College Now, partial enrollment, full-time and open enrollment, the parents with children's with disabilities, the voucher piece, and then attendance at private schools. So just kind of changing the orders of that, so that has been adjusted. And then the other piece we wanted to make sure we added to this was what we have available for our home-based private education programs. And so there are two bullets that have been added underneath all the options that we have in our district.
So I will move that we approve the memo to establish seats for open enrollment.
Is there a second? Thanks. Discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried.
I'll also move that we approve the district's notice of educational options as presented.
Is there a second? Thank you, Monica. Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The motion is carried. All right, Mike and Lynette, Finance and Facilities.
All right, Finance and Facilities met on Monday, January 12th, last Monday. Had a few items regarding our budget and our financial audit. So annually, the district hires an independent auditing firm to audit its financial statements and ensure compliance with the IRS GAAP rules, generally accepted accounting principles, and also the Wisconsin Uniform Financial Accounting Requirements, known as WUFR. Copies of the 24-25 reporting and insights and the financial statements were reported to the school board. And in addition, we had Sheann Hediger from Baker Tilly, who's our independent firm that audited us this year, provided a summary of the results at the January 12th Finance and Facilities meeting. The audit has also been submitted to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction as required. The results provided reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. This is a high level of assurance. And Lynette, maybe you can go through some of the details.
Yeah, so we have all of the documents that were provided from Baker Tilly as part of this agenda and also as part of the finance meeting last week. So those are available. The auditor basically went through the two-page summary that was provided, so the highlights. And those reviewed the responsibilities of the auditor, the responsibilities of the board, and also of management. So just be very, being very clear about what everyone's role is in the financial auditing process. So it was noted on page 6 of the reporting insights. So we've got 3 different documents. So the one that's labeled reporting insights, there was a deficiency in internal controls. And as Sheann explained, this is really due to the fact that the district doesn't complete and prepare its own financial statements. And she did mention that of all of the school districts and municipalities that they audit, 90% of them have this finding. And it just really comes down to staffing and resources that are available for those organizations. So
But typically, organizations of our size will have this finding.
absolutely, yes. Our size, for sure. Yep. So the other things that we went through, we reviewed the general fund and fund balance, which we're in good position with. We are at the high end of our policy, which is, the policy range is 25% to 30%, so we're right at that high end. We reviewed the cash and investment balances, as well as balances for the district's other funds, and also the percentage of debt to expenditures, and all of that is on that 2-page summary. As Mike mentioned, the financial statements have been submitted to DPI. We also now have them posted on our finance webpage. So anyone that's looking for those, again, part of this agenda, part of last week's agenda, so we've got those out there. And certainly anyone that would like a hard copy of those, we have them available or can print those off for anyone. There is one more report that will be submitted and provided to the school board, and it's for the audit of the federal and state awards, so our federal and state grants.
and that was delayed this year. The timeline was delayed due to the federal shutdown. So they were aware of that as the feds were still shut down, and we were made aware that that would likely be delayed. So we will be getting the report from that in the near future. So that pretty much sums up what Sheehan presented to the board.
It was a robust conversation. We asked a lot of questions. She even commented on that the board was very engaged and asked
Yes.
questions and asked for clarification and understanding.
Right, and I think she made a comment, I took it as not every school district provides an opportunity for them to come in and have that discussion. It's really just, you get the paper report and move on. So, yeah, again, I think she was appreciative that we had the discussion that we did. So.
And she helped us to learn, so it was
Right,
really
good
good.
learning
Always,
experience
yeah,
for the
It was
board.
great.
Yeah, always.
Right. Okay, so next on the agenda was our monthly update on our 25-26 budget. Nothing stood out in particular, just a couple things. One is we received our first special ed payment from the state. We budgeted at 40% reimbursement. The first payment came in and it's not tracking to 40%, but we have a total of 7 payments that are made throughout the year.
That's correct.
So this was the first one, and so we're hoping to get closer to that 40% reimbursement number.
Yeah, right now they're prorating it at 35%. So their goal was 42%. We were conservative and budgeted 40%, which is in line with kind of what the goal and the reality has been over the last several years. However, the estimate they're using now for the next 6 or 7 payments will be the 35%, and then we'll true up at the final payment.
Yeah.
So we are expecting it will be better than 35%. We're just not sure how much better, so.
But just to be clear, in case anybody hasn't followed this yet, the state promised us over 40% reimbursement,
42.
42%. Right
It's
now,
their
they're paying-
goal.
Right, they're paying us 35%. This is not our fault that we're getting less money, but we're gonna have to deal with it if we get less money. We're hoping that we're gonna get more than 35%, but it's just, the state promised more than they could deliver. We're gonna come up short.
All right, and just another note on the budget is our Fund 49, which is our construction account, is being spent down. That's as relation to last year's referendum and paying out the bills on our building projects. So that fund is being spent as we anticipated. So the other item on the agenda for finance facilities was that 26-27 budget forecast, and Dave did a nice job with discussing that, so I won't rehash kind of what he talked about. But we have some potential challenges that all districts are dealing with, I think, and with declining enrollment and things we'll have to deal with. But thank goodness we were able to pass that operating referendum and be able to at least stay on par for now. So that was it.
Yeah, and I think it's just, if I may, one more thing to point out that I think it's important. The projections, this kind of the summary that we provided is really assuming that we're not making any changes, any reductions, or, and that's not what's going to happen. We will be making changes, and we will be providing a balanced budget. So this is just sort of giving us sort of a goal. And I've also mentioned every time I present these is the further out we go, further years down the road, the less accurate these numbers are. However, I think it was Alan that mentioned, or Dave mentioned, that responsible districts are looking ahead and keeping that in mind as they're making decisions. So, and communicating that. So it's important to know.
It will come back to us, these issues.
Yep.
All right, the Personnel Committee met on January 12th, and while we did not take any action, we had good conversation about a variety of issues. One of the things that we did is we looked at the substitute fill rate, which is, we've made some good progress on that. We also discussed the high school assistant principal vacancy, and so we compared the 2 job descriptions for our 2 high school assistant principals. We talked about the process, and we are anxious to get moving on that search to find a really great person to join our district. We also had a staffing update, which we do typically this time of year. Then we went into closed session and we looked at the 2025-26 bargaining goals. We also talked about the potential for non-renewals. Anything else that we should add?
Maybe just a couple highlights about the
Okay.
high school assistant principal position. It's been posted since last week, Tuesday. We already have 7 applicants, so if anybody out there listening knows of high-quality administrators that are looking to join a high-functioning district, please encourage them to apply. The posting will be live until February 13th. We're hoping to have first round interviews in the middle to late part of February, second round interviews in the first week of March, and hire our AP the second week of March, the week prior to our spring break. So that's our timeline. I also want to add that we're working really hard to ensure that all stakeholders at the high school have an opportunity to participate in some capacity. So we've already met with stakeholder groups at the high school, the building leadership team, the student services team, and the office staff. Today, Mr. Litke gave a presentation to the high school staff, and they all participated in an anonymous survey to give feedback on the qualities and characteristics that they are looking for as individuals in this assistant principal. And from the stakeholder meetings and the survey that we conducted today, we'll create a framework, a profile, if you will, of what it is that we're looking for, so that when we screen candidates, which will be one group that teachers and all staff at the high school, from all staff groups, not all staff, but a group from all categories of staff can participate in narrowing that pool down to a reasonable number to interview during the first round. So that's the plan. We're excited about it. It's big work. It's really important work, and we're confident we're going to find a really good person to take over that role next school year.
Well, having that much interest this early on is also really great. So, anything else on that? All right, then I'm going to turn to you, Lindsay, as the board clerk for the next item.
Sure. So one of my responsibilities as board clerk is to certify school board candidates every spring for the election. This year we have 2 seats that are up for election, and we have 2 candidates that have filed paperwork to run. You can see in our packet that because our district falls in both St. Croix County and Pierce County, candidates file in both of those counties. And so you can find their paperwork in there. We had 2 candidates that filed, Stacy Johnson-Myers and Allison Page, who of course are current board members. So thank you to you both for your willingness to continue to serve in this capacity. Of course, due to the number of candidates, there's no need for a primary, so both of your names will fall on the April 7th ballot. And then just one quick note, I was out of town for the drawing of names and the order that they'll go in on the ballot, so Alan was generous enough to step in and cover that, so thank you to Alan for doing that. The name order will be Stacy Johnson-Myers first and Allison Page second. That's all been sent off to the municipal clerks.
And that's acknowledged for the record.
Right.
So, thank you very much. All right. Dave, do you want to talk about the board self-evaluation process, please?
Yep, so this is an annual thing that the board engages in. We're attempting to use a very consistent process year over year, which will help us over time collect data and maybe have more ability to compare longitudinally. So board members were sent the survey that is in the packet, which is the board assessment tool, and it covers all of the responsibilities that this board and other boards engage in: operations, culture, strategic planning, fiscal management, community engagement, policy, and vision. As well, administrators are completing a survey that's a little bit different, but it covers the ability for the board to get feedback from school leadership on some of these same topics. So what will happen, those are all sort of due. Your due date, if you're a due date person, is the end of the month, so 1/31 of 26. And then what will happen is Amanda will compile the results of both surveys and then share them back with each individual board member by 2/6. So you'll not only have the ability to give your feedback prior to the discussion, you'll also have the opportunity to see the accumulated feedback from administration as well as the other board members. And then at the next school board meeting, which will be on the 23rd, I believe now, the discussion that the board will engage in is really around some broad topics. What is the board doing well, and what should we continue to do? what are the practices that we need to prioritize and what are the areas that we need to grow. So I guess your assignment, if you have one, is to complete your individual survey, review the accumulated surveys, and be prepared to have that discussion at our next board.
Thank you. Any questions? All right, do we have any proposed items for future board meeting agendas? All right, then we're going to schedule the upcoming meetings. The Policy Ad Hoc Committee will meet Monday, February 2nd at 6 o'clock. Educational Program Committee will meet Monday, February 9th at 6 o'clock. There will be no Finance and Facilities meeting in February, which means that the Personnel Committee will meet immediately following Educational Program Committee on February 9th, 6 o'clock, or 7 o'clock-ish. And then the next regular board meeting will be Monday, February 23rd, and please make sure you realize that it's going to be the fourth Monday this month rather than the third. All of those meetings will be here in the district office, and the meeting is adjourned at 6:54. Nice. That's good.
Yes.